Do you consider yourself a good person or a bad one? Easy, right? Most of us would say we're good people, always trying to do the right thing. But what if I told you that, under certain circumstances, you, me, any of us could become a monster? Sounds exaggerated, doesn't it? But it's not. Psychology has proven it. Today we're going to explore the Lucifer Effect, that invisible force that can transform the kindest people into someone capable of doing unthinkable things. Why does this happen? What role do the environment, power, and our daily decisions play? You might be closer to that line than you think. Join me in this deep dive into how even the best people can cross that line. And by the end, I'll reveal something that will completely change the way you see the world. Before we begin, if you find value in these videos, please subscribe and click the bell to stay updated. Let's get started. The mirage of innate goodness. We like to think of ourselves as inherently good, but what if that perception is nothing more than a comforting mirage, an illusion that shields us from what truly lies within? Reflecting on this is not easy, but it is necessary. Because in the end, how well do we really know ourselves? Consider this. For centuries, philosophers like Rousseau and Hobbes have debated human nature. Rousseau believed we are born good and that society corrupts us. Hobbes, on the other hand, argued that we are inherently selfish and need laws and social structures to keep us in check. Two opposing views on who we are at our core. But modern neuroscience has come to challenge both perspectives. It turns out we are far more complex than these philosophers imagined. Our ethical brain, that marvelous neural machinery, shapes our moral decisions in a delicate dance between reason and emotion. We are neither angels nor demons by nature. We are blank canvases with infinite possibilities. Morality, my friend, is not a switch that's simply on or off. It's more like a spectrum, a range of shades that goes far beyond black and white. Each of us has the capacity to be heroes or villains, depending on the circumstances we find ourselves in. And speaking of circumstances, have you heard of the experiment that shook our beliefs about human goodness? Brace yourself, because what you're about to learn could forever change your perception of human nature. It was 1971 when Philip Zimbardo, a Stanford psychologist, conducted an experiment that would go down in history. The Stanford Prison Experiment, as it's known, started as a simple study on human behavior in prison environments. But what unfolded over 6 days exceeded all expectations and forced us to confront an uncomfortable truth about ourselves. Zimbardo recruited a group of college students, all deemed psychologically stable and good guys. He randomly divided them into two groups, guards and prisoners. He gave them uniforms, assigned roles, and placed them in a simulated prison in the basement of the psychology department. What happened next was equal parts astonishing and disturbing. Within days, these young students underwent an unexpected transformation. The guards began abusing their power, subjecting the prisoners to escalating humiliation and punishment. The prisoners, in turn, became submissive, depressed, and in some cases, even defended the system that oppressed them. Ordinary students, people who saw themselves as good, became monsters before our eyes. The experiment had to be halted prematurely due to the escalation of violence and psychological abuse. Do you realize what this means? The revelation is uncomfortable but undeniable. We all have the potential to be heroes or villains. Circumstances, power, and group pressure can transform us in ways we never imagined. But if we all have the capacity for evil, what keeps us good? This is the million-dollar question, the one that should keep us awake at night. Because, my friend, goodness is not a permanent state, but a constant choice. A decision we make every day, in every interaction, in every moment of our lives. The dark machinery of the mind. Imagine for a moment that your mind is a complex machine full of gears and mechanisms constantly turning. Have you ever wondered what invisible forces might cause those gears to shift toward the dark side? One of the most powerful gears in this dark machinery is dehumanization. It's a subtle but devastating process in which we gradually stop seeing others as complex human beings with dreams, fears, and emotions like ours. Think about how, in situations of conflict, it becomes easier to harm someone when we reduce them to a label: the enemy, the criminal, the outsider. This emotional disconnection is the first step toward acts we would normally consider unthinkable. Another insidious mechanism is the bystander effect, also known as the diffusion of responsibility. You know that sense of relief when, in a situation requiring intervention, you notice others around? That relief can be deceiving. When everyone is responsible, paradoxically, no one is. This phenomenon can lead entire groups to passively witness atrocities, each individual thinking, someone else will do something. Let me share a personal experience that perfectly illustrates this phenomenon. A few years ago, my friends and I were waiting for the bus after a night out. Suddenly, we saw two people fighting violently in the street. Around 50 people stood at the stop, but no one intervened. I had always prided myself on being the kind of person who would step up in such a situation, but when the moment came, I froze like everyone else. We tell ourselves, surely someone else will do something. But that someone else is thinking exactly the same thing. Obedience to authority is another crucial gear in this machinery. It's a silent power that can make us complicit in actions that contradict our own moral principles. It's not just about blindly following orders. Often it's a gradual process of ceding our moral autonomy to figures of authority, convincing ourselves that they know better or have the right to make ethical decisions for us. Group pressure, meanwhile, acts like a gravitational force on our psyche. Our innate desire to belong, to be accepted, can lead us to adjust our behavior, even our values, to fit in. It's as if our mental machine has a self-adjusting mechanism that syncs with group expectations, even when they go against our own moral judgment. There's also a mechanism we might call the slippery slope. It's both fascinating and terrifying how small, seemingly harmless steps can lead to great horrors. Each small ethical transgression we justify makes the next one a bit easier, a bit more normal. It's as though each questionable act lubricates the gears of our moral machine, causing it to spin faster and faster toward the unimaginable. The case of Abu Ghraib is a chilling example of how these mechanisms can converge. Ordinary soldiers, people who likely considered themselves good in everyday life, became torturers. How did this happen? Through a toxic combination of dehumanization of the enemy, obedience to authority, group pressure, and a gradual normalization of increasingly cruel behavior. The most unsettling part of all this is that these mechanisms are not exclusive to extreme situations or war contexts. They operate in our daily lives far more than we'd like to admit. At work, in personal relationships, even in online interactions, these gears are constantly turning, subtly influencing our decisions and behaviors. So how can we recognize these forces before they transform us? The key lies in self-awareness and constant vigilance. We must regularly question our actions and motivations, especially when we find ourselves justifying behaviors that contradict our core values. It's essential to cultivate a critical mind that can resist group pressure and challenge authority when necessary. By understanding this dark machinery, we can begin to take control of it, ensuring it doesn't take control of us. Does power corrupt or not? Have you ever wondered what you would do if you suddenly had absolute power over others? It's a question that invites reflection on our own nature and the effects power can have on us. Lord Acton, a 19th century British historian, left us with a phrase that has echoed through time. Power tends to corrupt, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. But is this statement a universal truth, or merely a reflection of our perception of power? The psychology of power is both fascinating and unsettling. When someone acquires power, their perception of the world and themselves changes in subtle but profound ways. Imagine you suddenly become the boss of your company or the leader of your country. How would your behavior change? Recent studies show that power can alter the brain, reducing our capacity for empathy and increasing our sense of entitlement and privilege. This phenomenon, known as the throne effect, explains why those in power often seem disconnected from the realities and needs of those around them. Think back to the last time you dealt with a boss or politician who seemed out of touch with reality. Chances are you were witnessing the throne effect in action. But the story doesn't end there. Revealing experiments have shown that even small doses of power can make us more selfish. In one fascinating study, participants were given a temporary sense of power, and their behavior was observed. The results were surprising. Those who felt powerful were more likely to take extra cookies from a shared plate, serve themselves first in group settings, and even cheat in games of chance. However, before we lose all hope in humanity, it's important to remember that power doesn't always corrupt. In fact, in the right hands, power can be an inspiring force for good. Throughout history, we've seen leaders resist the temptation of corruption and use their influence to improve the lives of others. Think of figures like Nelson Mandela or Mahatma Gandhi. What made them different? The key seems to lie in responsibility and accountability. When the powerful know their actions will be scrutinized and they must answer for them, they are less likely to abuse their position. Additionally, leaders who maintain a strong connection with their community and their core values appear more resistant to the corrupting effects of power. This revelation is hopeful because it shows that power, in itself, is not inherently bad. In fact, it can be a powerful tool for positive change when handled wisely and ethically. The real challenge lies in how we as individuals and as a society prepare to handle power responsibly. So, how can we cultivate the ability to wield power ethically? The answer may lie in education and self-reflection. We need to develop a deep understanding of our own values and motivations, and practice empathy and compassion in our daily lives. It's also crucial to foster systems of governance and leadership that promote transparency and accountability. By doing so, we can ensure that power doesn't corrupt, but rather empowers us to build a better world. Context is king. Have you ever wondered why we sometimes act so differently depending on where we are? Get ready, because we're about to dive into a reality that could shake your foundations. Context, the silent backdrop of our lives, holds a power over us that goes far beyond what we might ever have imagined. Think about this. What if I told you that your environment has more control over your decisions than your own willpower? Sounds far-fetched, doesn't it? But science shows us that this invisible force shapes our choices in ways we don't even notice. It's as if we're puppets on a cosmic stage, with the scenery dictating our movements more than we'd like to admit. Take Milgram's famous experiment, for example. Here, ordinary people like you and me, suddenly become complicit in actions that defy their moral compass. Why? Simply because the context told them it was the right thing to do. It's chilling to think how often we might have crossed ethical lines without realizing it, just because the environment normalized it. Speaking of normalization, have you heard of the broken windows theory? This theory suggests that a neglected environment invites antisocial behavior. It's as if the context whispers in our ears, anything goes here. Suddenly, actions we'd normally consider unacceptable become part of the everyday landscape. Ever wonder why certain areas of a city seem more prone to crime? It's no coincidence. It's the power of context at work. Now, imagine this effect magnified on a societal scale. Totalitarian systems are masters at creating contexts that transform ordinary citizens into cogs in a machine of oppression. This is the Lucifer Effect in its most extreme form. History is full of examples where entire populations seem to lose their moral compass overnight. But did they really lose it? Or did they simply succumb to the overwhelming pressure of their environment? But all is not lost, my friend. Just as context can bring out the worst in us, it also has the power to inspire our best. Think of those moments of crisis when unexpected heroes emerge, ordinary people who, in extraordinary circumstances, perform acts of courage and altruism they never thought themselves capable of. It's the same principle, but on the brighter side of the equation. And here's the crucial revelation. If context has so much power over us, doesn't that mean we can design environments that foster goodness? Imagine a world where our public spaces, institutions, and daily interactions are configured to bring out the best in each of us. It's not an unattainable utopia. It's a real possibility within our grasp. So the question remains, how can we create environments that push us toward our better selves? Perhaps the answer lies in small intentional changes in our daily lives. Maybe it's about becoming more aware of how our actions shape the atmosphere around us. Or it could mean a deeper re-evaluation of our social structures. What's certain is that the power of context is real, and if we learn to harness it, we might just create a world where our best selves become the norm, not the exception. Fear, the great manipulator. Have you ever felt your values crumble in the face of imminent danger? Fear, that primal emotion we all know, might just be the puppeteer behind some of our most surprising actions. Think back to a time when you lied to avoid punishment or ignored someone in need out of fear of getting involved. Fear has the power to transform us, pushing us to act against even our most deeply held principles. But why does fear have such control over us? The answer lies in our brains, specifically in the primitive regions that ignite when we sense a threat. In mere milliseconds, our bodies prepare for survival, flooding us with adrenaline and cortisol. In those moments, the rational part of our brain, home to our values and moral principles, takes a backseat. It's as if our minds say, "What's the point of being virtuous if we don't survive?" This reaction, essential for our species' survival in the wild, can become our moral downfall in the modern world. Under the grip of fear, our values become negotiable. Suddenly, actions we once deemed unthinkable become viable options. Ever wonder why seemingly ordinary people commit terrible acts in extreme situations? Fear might be the key. Here's where manipulation enters the picture. Throughout history, leaders and regimes have mastered the art of wielding fear as a tool for control. Think about how dictators have used the threat of an external enemy to justify atrocities, or how media outlets sometimes exaggerate dangers to keep audiences hooked. Fear is a potent weapon because it makes us malleable, ready to sacrifice our freedoms and values in exchange for a sense of security. But fear's most insidious effect isn't in making us active participants, it's in paralyzing us, turning us into silent spectators. How many times have you witnessed an injustice and chosen not to act out of fear of the consequences? This silence, this inaction, is what allows evil to thrive. As Edmund Burke famously said, "The only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good people to do nothing." However, not all is lost. History is filled with inspiring examples of individuals who faced their fears for the greater good. Think of activists who have stood up to oppressive regimes, journalists who have risked their lives to uncover the truth, or ordinary citizens who have confronted injustice in their communities. These people weren't fearless. They simply found a way to act despite their fears. How can we cultivate that moral resilience? The key is recognizing our fears and understanding their impact on us. When we're aware of how we react to fear, we can begin to take control. This requires ongoing self-reflection and education. Developing critical thinking helps us question the fear-driven narratives surrounding us. Additionally, fostering empathy and connection with others is vital, as isolation makes us more vulnerable to manipulation. If you're enjoying this reflection, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe with the notification bell so you never miss future videos. And if you love content like this as much as I do, comment, "I love these reflections." Let's keep learning and improving our lives together. Misinformation, the silent poison. Have you ever wondered if everything you believe might be part of an elaborate web of lies? In a world where the line between fact and fiction grows blurrier by the day, your reality could be a carefully constructed illusion. We live in the age of post-truth, a term that sounds almost dystopian, yet perfectly describes our daily existence. It's a time when emotions and personal beliefs often carry more weight than objective facts in shaping public opinion. Think about how you react to news that aligns with your beliefs versus news that challenges them. Isn't there an almost visceral satisfaction when you read something that supports your point of view? This natural tendency leads us into echo chambers and filter bubbles, digital and social spaces, where we hear only opinions that reinforce our ideas. Social media platforms and search algorithms, designed to keep us engaged, show us content they know we'll like. Gradually, we isolate ourselves from differing perspectives, and without realizing it, from the truth itself. The psychology of belief plays a critical role in this phenomenon. Changing your mind is a painful process for the brain. It requires admitting that you were wrong, something that goes against our instinct for self-preservation. That's why, even when faced with overwhelming evidence, many people cling to their erroneous beliefs. Can you remember the last time you admitted you were wrong in a discussion? It probably wasn't a pleasant experience. History is rife with examples of how misinformation has transformed entire societies. Think of Nazi propaganda during World War II or the disinformation campaigns of the Cold War. These manipulations didn't just alter the course of history, they led to unimaginable atrocities. It's a terrifying domino effect. One lie begets another, and before we know it, we're justifying acts that under other circumstances we would deem monstrous. In the digital age, the responsibility of media and social platforms is more critical than ever. These platforms have the power to amplify both truth and lies, with algorithms often favoring the most sensational and divisive content, regardless of its accuracy. How many times have you seen a false story shared thousands of times before it was debunked? But all is not lost. We have tools to fight misinformation. Critical thinking and fact-checking are our best defenses. Learning to question our information sources, cross-check facts, and seek evidence before forming an opinion is vital. Have you ever asked yourself why you believe what you believe? Have you tried seeking information that challenges your views? The hopeful revelation is that truth still holds power in the modern world. Despite efforts to distort it, reality has a way of coming to light. Think of investigative journalists exposing corruption scandals, or scientists battling misinformation on issues like climate change or vaccines. Our challenge is clear: to remain vigilant, question what we consume, and strive for the truth, even when it's uncomfortable. Because, as history has shown, a well-informed society is the strongest antidote to the silent poison of misinformation. The need for belonging, the double-edged sword. Imagine for a moment that your life depended on being accepted by a group. How far would you go? This question may seem extreme, but the reality is that our need for belonging is so powerful that it can drive us to extremes we never would have imagined. Psychology reveals that human beings are social creatures by nature, and our desire to be part of something greater than ourselves is deeply ingrained in our DNA. But why is this need so strong? The answer lies in our evolutionary origins. At the dawn of humanity, belonging to a group meant the difference between life and death. Those rejected by their tribe had little chance of survival in a hostile world. This ancestral reality has left an indelible mark on our brains, making social acceptance as vital to us as the air we breathe. The power of social influence was dramatically demonstrated in the famous Solomon Asch experiment. Can you imagine denying the evidence of your own eyes just to fit in with the group? That's exactly what many participants did. Asch discovered that when confronted with a unanimous group giving an obviously incorrect answer, about a third of people conformed and provided the same incorrect response. This experiment shows just how deeply group pressure can distort our perception. But the influence of the group goes beyond simple perceptual judgments. Our social identity, that is, the groups we identify with, can lead us to dangerous polarization. Think about how sports rivalries can escalate into violence, or how political differences can divide families and friendships. When we fall into the trap of us versus them, our capacity for empathy and reason can be seriously compromised. This dynamic becomes especially dangerous when we talk about toxic cultures. Groups have the power to normalize behaviors that, from an outsider's perspective, are clearly harmful or even criminal. Consider the case of youth gangs. For many young people growing up in marginalized environments, the gang becomes the family they never had, offering a sense of belonging and protection. However, the price of this belonging is often high. Participation in violent and criminal acts becomes a rite of passage, a way to prove loyalty to the group. But not everything is negative when we talk about the power of groups. History is full of examples of how belonging to a collective can inspire greatness and positive change in society. Think about the civil rights movements, environmental campaigns, or humanitarian aid initiatives. These positive social movements demonstrate that when we come together for a noble cause, our need for belonging can become a catalyst for the common good. The crucial revelation in all of this is that ultimately we have the power to choose which groups we belong to. Unlike our ancestors, who were limited to the tribes they were born into, we live in an interconnected world with infinite possibilities for association. We can seek out communities that reflect our deepest values and inspire us to be the best versions of ourselves. So, how can we satisfy our need for belonging in an ethical and constructive way? The key lies in self-awareness and critical reflection. We must constantly ask ourselves, are the groups I belong to making me a better person? Are they contributing positively to society? Or are they leading me down a path that contradicts my core values? Ultimately, our ability to choose wisely can transform this basic need into a powerful ally for our own growth and for the betterment of the world around us. The inner hero, cultivating moral resilience. Have you ever wondered what it feels like to be a hero? I'm not talking about saving the world with superpowers, but about something much deeper and real. Moral resilience might be the most important heroic act of our time. And the best part is, it is within reach for each of us. Think about this. Every day, we face small decisions that test our integrity. From choosing not to laugh at an offensive joke to reporting injustice at work, these seemingly insignificant actions are the seeds of everyday heroism. It's as if each one of us wears an invisible cape, ready to be deployed at the right moment. But how can we cultivate this inner hero? The key lies in developing a critical consciousness. Imagine your mind as an ethical muscle that needs daily exercise. Constantly questioning our actions and those of others around us is not paranoia. It's being awake. It's asking ourselves, am I being true to my values? Am I contributing to a better world or just going along with the flow? Ethical education plays a crucial role in this process. It's not about memorizing rules, but about preparing ourselves to face complex moral dilemmas before they arise. It's like training for the soul. Imagine you find yourself in a situation where you must choose between personal safety and doing what's right. How would you react? The answer depends largely on how mentally prepared you are. You see, empathy is like a silent superpower on this path to everyday heroism. When we're able to see the other as a complex human being with their own struggles and dreams, it becomes much harder to be cruel or indifferent. It's as if empathy acts as a shield, protecting us from our own capacity to do harm. History is full of inspiring examples of ordinary people who stood firm in the face of adversity. We don't have to look far to find heroes. It could be the neighbor who stood up against discrimination in their community, or the co-worker who reported corrupt practices despite potential retaliation. These acts of bravery, no matter how small they seem, have a domino effect. We inspire others with our actions, creating an inverse bystander effect, where one person can motivate many to do what's right. Remember, we are not alone in this journey. Creating support systems is crucial. Surrounding ourselves with ethical people not only gives us strength in difficult times, but it also raises our own moral standards. It's as if we're building a network of anonymous superheroes, ready to support each other in the fight for a better world. The most transformative revelation is that we all have the potential to be heroes. It's not about grand acts. It's about the sum of small daily decisions. Every time we choose integrity over convenience, empathy over indifference, we are nurturing our inner hero. So, how can we cultivate this hero day by day? Start with something simple. Pay attention. Observe your thoughts, your reactions, your biases. Question them with love, but with firmness. Practice kindness, not as a pose, but as a habit. Educate yourself on ethical topics, not to win debates, but to better understand the complexity of the world. And most importantly, act, because the hero inside you only awakens when you decide to do something, no matter how small. The path forward, personal and social transformation. Have you ever wondered if you can really change the world? It sounds ambitious, right? But perhaps we're closer to that reality than we think. Imagine for a moment that every ethical action you take not only transforms you, but has the power to create waves of change throughout your surroundings. It sounds like a utopia, I know, but the truth is that the path forward is both personal and collective. You know, there's a fascinating paradox in all this ethical growth. The more we strive to be better people, the more we realize how much we still need to improve. It's as if the horizon of goodness moves further away with each step we take toward it. But what if that moving horizon was exactly what we need to evolve as a species? Morality isn't a destination, it's a constant journey. Every day we face dozens of small decisions that test our integrity. From deciding whether to tell a white lie to facing ethical dilemmas at work, every choice is an opportunity to cultivate our moral muscle. And this is where individual responsibility comes into play. Think of this. Your daily decisions are like drops of water in an ocean. One drop may seem insignificant, but millions of them create tides capable of eroding mountains. Similarly, every time you choose integrity over convenience, you are contributing to a larger change than you might realize. But how can we stay mindful in a world full of distractions? This is where tools like self-reflection and mindfulness come into play. Imagine your mind as a garden. Self-reflection is like pulling out the weeds, examining your thoughts and actions with honesty. Mindfulness, on the other hand, is like watering the flowers, cultivating a constant awareness of your values and how you live them in the present moment. Now, it would be naive to think that ethical transformation is only about individual effort. We live in complex systems that often foster unethical behavior. Have you ever wondered why it's so difficult to be completely ethical in certain jobs or social situations? The answer lies in the design of our systems. Imagine a society where integrity is rewarded as much as productivity, where companies value ethics as much as profits. Sounds utopian, right? But the truth is, there are already movements in this direction, from companies adopting ethical business models to governments implementing policies based on the happiness and well-being of their citizens. And speaking of the future, what about the next generations? Education plays a crucial role in this path forward. Imagine schools where empathy and critical thinking are as important as math, where children learn to question their own biases and see the world from multiple perspectives. We're not that far from that reality, but we can't talk about the future without mentioning technology. The digital age presents us with entirely new ethical challenges. From data privacy to artificial intelligence, we face questions that our ancestors could never have imagined. But with these challenges also come incredible opportunities. Technology has the potential to amplify our best qualities, to connect us in ways that foster empathy and global understanding. Conclusion: moral transformation is not a final destination, but an ongoing journey that we embark on every day. Have you ever wondered how your small daily decisions can influence the moral course of society? Think about it. Every act of kindness, every ethical choice is like a stone thrown into a pond, creating ripples that extend beyond what we can see. You know, the real question isn't whether you are a good or bad person in absolute terms. It's more like, what do you choose to be today? How do you decide to act in each moment? Remember that we all have the power to be agents of positive change in our surroundings. Whether it's confronting injustices, showing empathy, or simply being honest in difficult situations, every action counts. The key is to stay conscious and committed to our values, even when no one is watching. If you've made it this far, write, "I choose to do good" in the comments, so I'll know who the victorious ones are, who made it to the end of the video. Don't forget to give a like, subscribe, and activate notifications for more content like this in the future. Lastly, if you value my work and want to support me, you can become an exclusive member of the channel and share these videos with your loved ones. Remember that you can download my new ebook, where you'll find all the wisdom and advice you need to live a fulfilling and happy life. I'll leave the links in the pinned comment. A big hug, and I'll see you in the next video.